Hey, this is Joe, Gray Bench Electronics. Welcome back to the pedal teardown series where I take apart new and interesting pedals and show you what's going on inside. Today we have the Death by Audio Germanium filter. Death by Audio Germanium filter. It's a new fuzz distortion filter pedal from Death by Audio, which is a builder out of New York. We have two controls on the front. This one is marked high to heavy, sort of like a tone control. And second control here is marked clean to dirty. Noticeably missing is a volume control. There is an internal trimmer for volume, but it just sort of speaks to the design of this pedal. It's not meant necessarily as a boost pedal or for amplification. It's specifically meant to apply a certain effect or sound to the pedal. So no external volume control. Simply have a type of tone control and a gain or distortion control. Latching, clicking foot switch. Feels like the Alpha style. External chrome bezel with a 5mm diffused red LED there. Gold silkscreen graphics, very Death by Audio typical. 1590, or excuse me, 125B/1590N1 size enclosure. Interesting, we sort of have a matte powder coat on the actual enclosure box, but the back panel or back door has a silver, sort of a silver sparkle paint job there. Top mounted 1/4-inch jacks for in and out. We also have what's going to be a PCB mounted 2.1mm DC jack, and just a hole drilled through to get the barrel through the enclosure. I can see here that the enclosure is cut or milled out to be able to take out the PCB. Whenever you have PCB mounted components like the pots and the foot switch here that are orthogonal to PCB mounted jacks, you're going to have some issue with getting that out of the enclosure, and you have to deal with that in some way. The Earthquaker pedal we saw, I believe the Life pedal, that one you basically couldn't get the PCB out of the enclosure without desoldering something. This one they cut out the enclosure to allow the PCB to come out easier. You'll see that in a second. Bottom panel here has rubber feet attached. That's all for the exterior. Let's crack open the pedal. All right, so here is the PCB for the Death by Audio Germanium Fuzz. One note about the enclosure, I don't like the style of enclosures here that come with these self-tapping screws. Like so, you can see they sort of have a cutting thread on the bottom portion of the screw there, which means that only these top threads have this full circumference engagement where the lower ones are more conical shaped. What that means is there's just not a ton of thread engagement, and it's a lot easier to strip these out. That's what happened here. Is it basically was stripped out when I took it out of the enclosure, and they're a lot easier to cross thread as well because you only have a couple screws to get, there's a couple of threads to get that right. So unfortunately this one has a stripped screw here. Might be able to do a little bit of repair, just drilling a little bit further down and tapping it out to the number 6 screw, but we'll see for later. So that's the enclosure. Enclosure has a piece of foam for the battery, which is cool. And otherwise you can see there the milling or stamping that's done for the clearance for the input and output jacks. The enclosure has no manufacturer markings. So onto the PCB. The battery snap is on its own little socket. I just pulled it out to get it in this PCB holder, but it's tucked under here. It's just a standard little push-in socket. I call these Molex headers, JST headers, whatever. Just a little removable socket for the battery snap. The germanium transistors are right here. They are the Russian or Soviet germanium transistors. These transistors have the part number MP10B. Of course, those are Cyrillic characters, not actually English characters. That's sort of the Bodge translation. But MP10B are the transistors selected there. A pair of them, obviously. We also have a small transistor here, which thankfully the PCB is marked to tell us what it is, which is a BS170, which is a N-channel MOSFET. Actually, the whole PCB is marked as far as values for resistors and capacitors. couple diodes here that aren't marked, but the way they're configured, they look like a sort of a protection or clamping diodes on the input for the MOSFET, which is a good idea. You want to protect the MOSFET from overvoltage on its gate or static discharge. Here is the volume trimmer. It is a 100K trimmer, and right now it's set at approximately 2 p.m. So that is, when I play tested a little bit, it was a little bit past unity. We have Neutrik, 1/4 inch, stereo, PCB mounted jacks, Death by Audio Germanium filter right there on the board, PCB mounted, DC jack. Potentiometers are the PCB mount long leg alpha pots. We have an A500K, and that is the tone control, and a B50K for the distortion or gain or dirtiness control. There's our 5mm LED. Foot switch is also PCB mounted, and it is the alpha style foot switch. As far as soldering, the surface mount soldering looks good. It might be done by a machine, it's hard to tell. The off-board components like the jack and the pots and the foot switch here, I suppose it's not really a big deal, but they make very large holes for the legs that are coming up through the board, and then just apply a little bit of solder. I don't know if there's any structural issue with this. It just doesn't look nice to me. The holes are only partially filled. One benefit I could say is there would be a lot easier to desolder, because once you wick up or suck up all this extra solder, the lead has a lot of space around it from the hole, and it's going to be less likely to want to wick back into the PCB, like soldered on with a little bit of solder that's left, compared to when the hole for the leg is a lot smaller. I can see that as one benefit. It just doesn't look very nice in this, the way it is here, where it's just a little bit of solder sort of tacking it to the side of the PCB. I just don't like how it looks. Otherwise, the solder looks good. Good components, Neutrik, obviously Germanium transistors, you don't have much of a choice there. Alpha foot switch is nice. And the layout is nice and clean and easy. Everything's well marked. Just looking at the circuit, rough estimate is it's going to be a MOSFET input stage, and then it's going to be going to 2 of these germanium stages. There doesn't appear to be any voltage regulator or voltage inverter circuit for this design, which you would normally see for a pedal that has a 9-volt, positive 9-volt DC input, but PNP germanium transistors or even silicon transistors, which implies to me that the germanium transistors here are going to be run sort of in reverse, meaning sort of flipped upside down, where the emitter is going to be tied to the 9-volt rail, positive 9-volt rail, and the collector is going to be tied to ground, which is fine. You can run transistors in reverse like that. Sometimes you have to be careful with oscillation depending on the specific circuit and how it's hooked up. When I play tested this pedal, I didn't have any of those issues, so it seems to be fine. All right, so that is the inside of the Death by Audio Germanium filter. Let's go ahead and put the pedal back together. All right, so that completes the teardown of the Death by Audio Germanium filter. If you have any questions or recommendations for a pedal you want to see in a future teardown episode, let me know in the comments. If you enjoyed the video, I'd appreciate you hitting the like button and subscribing. Hit the notification bell if you want to know when I make a new video. I am Joe from Gray Bench Electronics. Thank you for watching.